10 on the evening of 21st November 2021, the police received a call from an address in Dragon Rise in Norton Fitzwarren, where the occupant of that address had told us he stabbed two of his neighbours, Jennifer and Stephen Chappell. Put your hands up. When you look at the circumstances around this case, is it unusual? Of course it's unusual. Norton Fitzwarren's a respectable place. We don't expect this sort of offences to take place. We don't often get double murders. And for one person to stab two victims in quick succession is not an easy task.
Jennifer Chappell didn't even have time to get up off the sofa. When the police found her, she was slumped forward in front of the sofa where she'd kind of fallen as she was dying.
Why did it happen? There was no obvious motive for this offence. This is somebody in their own living room on a Sunday night, watching TV, sad like every other husband and wife around the country, brutally murdered within their own house.
Jennifer was my best friend in the whole world. I moved to Glastonbury and started at the local primary school, and she took me right under her wing. Jennifer commanded a room. She would walk in and instantly would be like, wow. She oozed charisma. Jen embodied everything that Glastonbury stands for, crystals and witches and birds and kind of like this witchy Glastonbury essence. She used to take me onto the local music scene, which was all predominantly metal, and it was a bit of a trademark for us as friends to go for guys in bands. It was a bit of a kind of, I'm with a guy in a band. Like, of course you are.
It's on the colourful local music scene that Jennifer meets the man who will change her life.
I knew a guy had come onto the scene that had caught her attention, and that guy was Stephen. Stephen was a teacher, but he was playing music as well in a successful band that were really well known in the area. To hear of Jennifer and Stephen, it wasn't a surprise because of who Jennifer was and who Stephen was.
From the moment 29-year-old Stephen and 26-year-old Jennifer get together, they are inseparable.
I think as soon as everybody met him, they knew he's the one. There was so much love between them. They were just the perfect match.
They were soulmates. He was very, very, very dry, very sarcastic, confident, outgoing. He loved music, absolutely loved music.
Jennifer had sent me a message saying, meet your new niece or nephew, and I will never forget the joy I felt seeing the ultrasound photo and just going, oh my god, I'm going to have a nephew or a niece. They were so over the moon, because I think Jennifer always wanted children.
With one child and another on the way, the couple begin to squirrel away money to buy a home of their own.
Norton Fitzwarren's quite a small place, quite quiet. Only about 3,000 people live there, so more of a suburb of Taunton, really. We've got some new build estates around the edges.
Jennifer and Stephen's house hunting takes them to what appears to be the perfect location.
Dragon Rise is just off the main road through Norton Fitzwarren. Everyone had a back garden. There were schools nearby.
I think they were just happy that they had a place, and I think that's where they thought they'd settle down and stay forever.
Jennifer says it was a really lovely environment to bring children up in. Really great sense of community, amazing neighbours. Jennifer just moved in and slotted right in with everyone.
The Reeves just seemed like a normal family, like anybody else on that same estate.
Soon after moving in, the Chappells meet their next-door neighbours, Kaylee Reeves and her truck driver husband, Colin.
Colin Reeves was working for a transport company delivering extendable platforms around the country. He has two young daughters that were at the same local primary school, and Kaylee, his wife, was a mother.
The Reeveses had two daughters and the Chappells had two sons. They had that in common. They both had kids and they used to bump into each other on the school run.
I think quite early on they got on quite well, like they were friendly.
Colin Reeves was a bit quieter maybe not as chatty as Kaylee. I didn't think they were uneasy about him. I think they just thought he was not a very extroverted person. One evening, Stephen was manoeuvring into his parking space and he bumped Colin Reeves' car and he caused quite a bit of damage.
Stephen was really embarrassed. He was genuinely a bit sort of, oh God, what have I done? And was very aware that everyone's children would be asleep. So he left it to Jennifer. Jennifer sent a message, that we're really sorry. How do we rectify this?
It cost a couple of £1,000 to get it fixed.
While Stephen and Jennifer consider the matter closed, next door the Reeves aren't quite so happy with the way it was handled.
It does seem, from our records at that point, the relationship between the two families deteriorated somewhat.
If an issue, even if it seems quite minor at the time, isn't resolved, then there's a problem, because the feelings of resentment can fester over time. Nobody could have predicted that this innocent act of accidentally bashing into your neighbour's car could have set off a chain of events that eventually led to such a
Colin came out.
Jennifer wasn't aggressive in her reply. It was just, yes, you can, I can, this is a free space. And it was niggly rather than aggressive. He'd obviously been stewing on it a little. He was automatically aggressive, which automatically made Jennifer a bit sort of on the back foot.
It felt like he was coming out just to try and maybe scare her. Maybe try and show that he's got some sort of power. But I'm sure Colin probably didn't like her because she would happily actually argue back.
Colin Reeves couldn't understand why Jennifer Chappell would get another car when she didn't have the space for it. And Jennifer couldn't understand why he couldn't just get over it. I think they just butted heads, really. Colin Reeves came up with the idea of widening the parking space.
He'd laid some bricks in the communal area to widen his driveway, and at the top of that communal area was where cars would park. So it kind of made it so no one could park there, which made Jennifer and Stephen's life difficult when they now had two cars.
They asked him, why he had done it, and he said that by widening his space, this had reduced the stress that he and Kaylee were going through as a result of the parking space issue.
The way that Reeves has dealt with this whole situation suggests that he's not a man that has the psychological skills to handle it in a more healthy and calmer manner, but instead somebody who's probably quite impulsive. He's the kind of person that will not express his emotions in a healthy manner, but rather bottle them up.
At this point, Jennifer was holding quite a lot of anger towards the Reeves, more from feeling like they were being a little petty.
And after 3 years, Jennifer and Kaylee's relationship has now also completely deteriorated.
It got to the point where Jennifer and Kaylee didn't want to run into each other on the school run anymore. Friendly neighbourliness had completely broken down.
There was tension between the mothers. Kaylee believed that Jennifer was shooting her looks or talking about her. Jennifer believed the same about Kaylee.
Kaylee would then tell Colin, or Colin would find out about these, and I think really played on his mind because he really wanted to protect his family and his wife specifically.
Jennifer's on edge, so Stephen's on edge. Kaylee's on edge, so Colin's on edge. Everyone's feeling it. And Colin turns out at her place of work.
Jennifer is working in the cafe at the garden centre when she gets the feeling she's being watched.
Jennifer texts me and she said, Colin's come to my work and he's just staring at me. He's got his arms crossed. He's watching me. He's not interacting with his children. He's just sat there. I believe he was there for well over 2 hours. A long time. To sit in a cafe and just watch someone. Why? It's very, very intimidating and then validating Jennifer's fear of the Reeves.
Jennifer said that he turned his chair to face her. It did seem a bit strange to go to the same place that your neighbour's working and to turn your chair to stare at them.
It's possible that it was just a coincidence and Colin was just there with his children, but it really feels like this is done intentionally to be menacing and to be intimidating. And this must have been terrifying for Jennifer.
Colin Reeves joined the army when he was 17 and he passed the commando course, which is extremely difficult and quite gruelling, and he was very proud to have passed that. He went to Afghanistan to Camp Bastion, and while he was there he was also a security guard on the prisoner of war camp where they held the suspected terrorists. So he had quite a varied and probably quite a harrowing time in Afghanistan.
I believe it's at that point that, for me, the penny dropped that Jennifer was scared of something worse than a dispute, because Jennifer's words to me were, he's a trained killer and he's watching me.
It wasn't just a neighbourly dispute anymore, this had become personal.
The couple find that what had once been a happy home has become a prison.
Jennifer got more and more scared because of Colin's background in the army, and she just felt more scared to go out. And that's not really fair, because you should feel safe in the place you're living.
And next door, the Reeves are in a state of turmoil too.
I think by November 2021, Colin Reeves' mental state deteriorated quite a bit. It was coming up to Remembrance Sunday, which was always very difficult for him as an army veteran. It was around then that he had a conversation with Kaylee, and he said that he just wasn't feeling himself. He thought that she would be better off without him, and he talked about his job and how depressed and lonely he felt driving the lorry all day. He was in quite a bad place mentally.
It does feel like he's unravelling. We know that he's got these mental health problems, and of course there's this ongoing dispute with the neighbours, and then on top of that he's got some marital problems, so to me it feels like the whole world around him is kind of crumbling.
Jennifer Chappell came home to our house one night. She knew that the Reeveses had this camera that overlooked their parking space, and so she made a rude gesture at the camera.
Reeves has taken to watching the monitor of his CCTV camera, and Jennifer's action leaves him enraged.
Ultimately, only Colin Reeves knows why he set up a camera. I know he didn't like cameras, he didn't like feeling like he was on camera. He used to tape over the camera on his phone because maybe he thought people were spying on him. In his job as a lorry driver, there was a camera in his cab that videoed everything he was doing. That was something he really didn't like about his job.
The 11th of November is really important because it's Remembrance Day. And Colin obviously is an ex-soldier. I believe he dealt with his own demons that day.
Colin spends the morning at a remembrance event. Back at home, trouble is brewing.
Jennifer had seen the Reeves children hissing and spitting and trying to hurt her cats. She'd sent over a text message. She's letting kids just terrorise my cats. How is she letting that happen?
Jennifer confronted Kaylee about it and said, your children are kind of spitting at the cats, hissing at them. I think Kaylee said something along the lines like, that's what children do. They were quite confrontational with each other.
Colin returns to find his wife Kaylee upset and angry. As Jennifer returns home, he suddenly approaches.
When she got out of her car and walked towards her front door, Colin Reeves appeared out of the darkness and accused Jennifer of gobbing off. And she said Kaylee started it and told him to F off. Once Colin came out of the darkness, both of them were firing on all cylinders. Colin Reeves was swearing at her, calling her all sorts of names, calling her fat.
She's the one who started it.
He's really aggressive. I think Jennifer just wanted to get inside and out of the way of it because she didn't want anything to happen.
She was really scared when she goes back in that house. She calls me. I'm sat on the sofa with another friend who's gone, this is horrible. I think that was the real moment that Jennifer feared for her life.
It was clear that any kind of diplomatic relations between the two families were gone by that stage. It was full-on war between them.
Jennifer and I were exchanging videos on a social media platform, and she voiced her concerns about Colin. Danny, he is a trained killer. he's coming for me. I think that all made us stand up and take notice.
Colin Reeves went to the Christmas lights switch on in Taunton with his mum and his sister and his 2 daughters. He was surrounded by crowds and he found being in a crowded environment quite difficult after lockdown.
Colin Reeves arrives home shortly before 6 p.m. Next door, Stephen Chappell is marking homework. Jennifer is putting the boys to bed before settling down to watch TV.
It's Sunday, 21st November 2021, in Dragon Rise, cold evening, coming on towards Christmas.
3 hours later, the Chapel CCTV camera detects movement.
The CCTV is essentially motion activated. The first thing you see is a figure over the garden fence to the right, which is the direction of Colin Reeves' house. That person then crouches down underneath the windows at the back of the house. Then in the bottom corner, what appears to be a back door opening, and that opens quite quickly after he crouches down. And then very soon after that, you hear a really piercing scream.
The screams are too distressing to broadcast. They last well over 10 seconds.
When you listen to that, there's no doubt that that is somebody that is totally fearing for their life. Quite soon after the screams, that figure is seen leaving the back of the house and returning the direction he came from.
The neighbours are alerted by the screams coming from Jennifer and Stephen's house.
They heard this screaming coming from next door. It was like nothing they'd ever heard before. It was terrible.
It's November, the windows are shut, the doors are shut in houses, and they hear these screams over the TV. And that led one of the neighbours to text within their WhatsApp group, one of the other neighbours saying, "Did you hear that scream?"
Texted Jennifer and he said, "Are you okay?" No response.
And that led them both, because the scream was so significant, to say, "Let's go and check everything's okay."
The door was unlocked and they went inside. And they went down the hall into the living room, and that was where they saw Jennifer and Stephen lying in a pool of blood on the living room floor.
I was stabbed.
Right, when's that?
Neighbour's husband and the mother.
Whereabouts have you been stabbed?
No, not me, the neighbours.
The neighbour's been stabbed by who?
By me.
By you?
Yes.
Right, okay.
Colin Reeves sounded very, not calm exactly, but very collected, considering what he'd just done.
How bad are the injuries?
They've both been stabbed.
Right,
times.
several times. Alright, stay on the line for me, okay? Are you in your house on your own?
No, my wife, my children in bed.
Alright, okay.
It feels like Reeves is doing his best to be cooperative. He's answering all the questions.
Tell me exactly what's happened. Take a deep breath.
You can even hear him, it sounds like he's sobbing, it sounds like he's crying.
I went round
Yeah.
with a knife.
Okay.
The more of it you listen to, you hear him starting to breathe more heavily, there's longer gaps between what he's saying.
I've stabbed both of them.
Alright, how many times?
I don't know, a couple of times each. 2 or 3 times each, maybe.
I think as he's speaking to the call handler, it's slowly, the gravity of what he's done is starting to dawn on him.
Are they still conscious and breathing?
I don't think so, no.
Okay.
I think at that point he was shocked at himself.
Are they males or females?
One male, one female.
But then you can nearly hear like the army veteran in him as well. Every time she asks him a question, he answers it succinctly, he answers it clearly.
What's your name?
Colin Reeves.
Alright, Colin. How are you spelling your surname?
R-E-V-E-S.
Alright.
But then you hear the man behind it who's struggling to come to terms with what's just happened. He's starting to realise what he's just done.
What kind of knife did you use?
It was dagger.
Okay.
The kind of things that hit me from that call is he appears quite lucid, seems to understand what he's done.
Alright, just stay on the line for me, okay? We're going to get some help out there as soon as we can. Alright. So you stabbed them both several times?
Yes.
Coherence. He explains quite plainly what's occurred, answers the questions that the call handler puts to him.
Where's the knife now?
It's in my house.
Okay. Alright. You've done the right thing by calling us, okay? So what was their situation when you left?
He was lying on the floor. She was lying on the sofa.
Right, okay. And were they awake? Were they...
No, I think they were sort of drifted.
I'm sure there's absolute turmoil going on in his head. He's probably thinking about the impact it's going to have on his wife and his own children. So lots of very conflicting and very difficult thoughts all flooding in at once.
Even before the call has ended, police units from the whole area are scrambled.
When the police arrive at a crime scene, our first job is to preserve life and also assess what we were actually dealing with. They were met with absolutely horrendous circumstances. Two deceased people in the living room, 2 adults. They had suffered a number of stab wounds to their torsos, and there was significant blood on the floor. And really, unfortunately, there's 2 young children asleep upstairs in their bedroom. Those children were removed from the premises quite quickly and taken to a safe place until we could establish who their next of kin was, essentially, so they could be with somebody that they knew and knew them.
Rumours of an incident on Dragon Rise spread quickly.
I have local alerts on the computer that ping up, and it said an incident was unfolding in Norton Fitzwarren. So I clicked on it. Then they dinged up a picture and it was Jennifer's door. All it said was a scene was unfolding, so I took to social media. The forefront of my mind was, is Jennifer okay? Has Jennifer been hurt?
Danny gets a message from a friend of Jennifer.
She said, I'm really sorry. She said, Jennifer's passed away. Without a shadow of a doubt, the second I heard Jennifer was dead, I knew it was Colin. There was no doubt in my mind that Colin had done it. She told us this was going to happen, and it did.
When the police officers went to arrest Colin Reeves from his house, it was pretty calm. Put your hands up.
Not me, mate, him.
You?
Go in the house.
His demeanour was one of somebody that was resigned to the fact he was going to be arrested.
Hold still. Listen, you're under arrest at the minute on the attempted murder of 2 people inside the address next door. Do you understand? Okay. Let's walk over here and I'll play.
To me, it seems that Reeves is just completely dazed. You know, he's just stunned, he's stupefied. So I think the enormity of the situation and the consequences of what he's done is flooding into his mind. But at the same time, he was pretty much cooperative with the police. He was following instructions. It didn't look like he was suffering from acute symptoms of mental illness at that time.
Although he's committed what at that stage we believe is a really serious offence, we still need to worry about the safeguarding of Colin Reeves. Yeah. Having committed this offence, what sort of effect is that going to have on him and his mental health at that stage?
Reeves is taken directly to a police custody suite.
How are you feeling in yourself, brother? How are you feeling in yourself now? Confused. Okay.
We're having him in a custody suite. We're able to monitor him live time to make sure that he's not going to do himself any harm and he can't cause danger to anybody else.
Under questioning, it's as though the former soldier believes he's back in Afghanistan.
A message from my stepsister, and it said something like, you know, are you awake, can you talk, and it's like urgent, and I thought that's a bit strange. She called me and said Jennifer and Stephen have been murdered. I thought, this is a prank, what's going on? What's happened? I've just woken up, my brain's not quite with it enough. And she said, yeah, they've been murdered. I was like, the boys, where are the boys? Are they okay? Are they alive? She said, yep, they're fine. I just screamed into my pillow because my son was still asleep. I thought, I can't wake him.
On Monday morning, police forensic teams enter the chapel's home.
I've got Colin Reeves in custody initially for 24 hours, which I can then get extended up to 96 hours. But I need to recover that evidence quickly. I need to be in a position to be able to charge Colin Reeves within that time period.
Neil Mead hurries to piece together how and why the killings occurred.
It's quite a small house, just kitchen and a living room downstairs, a door onto the back garden, and both Stephen and Jennifer were in that room, and there was very little sign of disturbance elsewhere within the premises. This is something that happened very, very quickly. It wasn't a situation where Stephen or Jennifer were able to react.
For the first 3 days after Jennifer and Stephen were murdered, their children didn't know. We took their eldest to the park, and he said, have Mummy and Daddy done a bad thing? Are they with the police? And all we thought was, we wish that's what it was. We talked to Stephen's sister, and she said, we'll do it together. We'll tell them together. They both came and sat on my lap, cuddling up to me. I told them, do you remember how Mummy talked about Grandad, who is no longer with us? You know, he's up in heaven. And I said, well, Mummy and Daddy have joined him. They're okay. They're watching over you. At that point, their eldest made the worst noise, like the proper horrible cry. And I will never forget. It was one of the hardest days of my life. It really was.
Throughout the interview process, Colin Reeves answered no comments to every question.
Despite having admitted the killing in his 999 call, he is now less willing to talk.
Tell me what happened yesterday in Dragon Rise that led to the deaths of Jennifer and Stephen Chapman.
He sat forward in his chair. It's a typical position that somebody would sit in, being interviewed for such a serious offence, when the gravity of what's happened is starting to come to the forefront of their mind, and that the impact that's going to have on him for the rest of his life alongside the victims.
When you were being assessed in the custody unit here, you said, I shouldn't have done it. I've ruined their lives and mine. Can I just confirm, did you say that? And what did you mean by that?
The next stage would be to get the forensic post-mortems of Stephen and Jennifer completed, which will give me a cause of death. In Stephen and Jennifer's case, they were both found to have died from 6 stab wounds. So that tells me that he's gone there intending to kill him, and has done it very quickly once he's into premises.
When we actually look at the attacks, they were ferocious and they were efficient, but somehow they don't feel frenzied. So I think what we can garner from that is that there was actually a calmness and a cold calculation in terms of Colin Reeves' state of mind at the time.
Alright, what kind of knife did you use?
It was dagger.
Okay.
And the stab wounds had the telltale diamond pattern of a very particular type of blade.
The dagger we believe was used in the murder is what's called a Fairburn Sykes dagger, and it's the traditional dagger of the Commando Regiment.
Detectives believe they can see it in Reeves' hand as he enters the chapel's home.
When Colin Reeves left the army, he was given a presentation frame which had a dagger as the centerpiece.
It was something that army veterans got. It was a kind of a prestige thing, and we know now that he took the dagger out of the frame.
Reeves makes an active choice to use the ceremonial dagger. It probably would have been quicker and easier for him to just walk into his kitchen and grab a knife rather than smash the frame where it was. And I don't think that's a coincidence. I think it's somehow symbolic to Reeves.
Another bit of evidence we gained was a recording device, an Alexa-type device within the Reeves house.
And specialist investigators are able to find something in the memory of that device that finally suggests a motive for these brutal killings.
We were able to recover from that a small clip which supported the theory we had that there'd been an argument, a disagreement between Colin Reeves and his wife immediately prior to the offence.
He came home from the Christmas lights switch on, and he went upstairs where his wife Kaylee was watching TV, and he said, I've been feeling lonely, and she says, well, so have I.
Reeves tries to talk to his wife about his struggles with his mental health.
She said, there's only so many years I can take this, and it was at that point that she suggested that they should separate for 2 weeks as a sort of trial. Colin left the bedroom and then sat down on the stairs. He said that he cried and he felt a fear of losing everything, of losing his family, his kids, his wife. At that point he would have been quite close to the military plaque on the wall, which had the dagger in it.
Colin probably hit rock bottom because it means that he has to reassess his life, his future, maybe even his own personality traits. The potential breakup with his wife, I think, is a huge trigger point.
Investigators formally charge Colin Reeves with the murders of Jennifer and Stephen Chapel, but Reeves decides to contest the case.
I was very, very angry to hear that he'd pleaded not guilty. I was like, he has to be guilty. No, he's admitted.
It was my first trial in my first job as a journalist, so I wasn't really sure what to expect. I think the fact that Reeves was an ex-soldier and that there's been a neighbourly dispute that had got out of hand had really drawn in a lot of journalists. The public gallery was absolutely packed.
As the trial of Colin Reeves begins, the veteran of the war in Afghanistan stuns the courtroom by pleading not guilty to the murders of Stephen and Jennifer Chappell on the grounds of diminished responsibility.
Diminished responsibility is a psychiatric defence. It's only relevant for murder, and it downgrades it to manslaughter. The defendant and his defence team, on the strength of psychiatric expert evidence, has to prove that at the time of the killing, they were suffering from an abnormal state of mind that affected either his ability to understand his conduct, or to form a rational judgment, or to exhibit self-control.
It just didn't add up. We were like, why is he doing diminished responsibility? Surely he knew what he was doing, because he's the one that's called the police. He knows he's killed 2 people. So it just didn't make sense at all.
We understand that he has mental health struggles, and we're not without, I don't want to use the word sympathy, but understanding that people struggle with their mental health, but that does not mean that you get away with what you did to our friends.
Reeves' defence claims the combination of the Christmas lights he visited and the proximity of the war memorial triggered an episode of post-traumatic stress disorder.
When somebody's experiencing a genuine severe post-traumatic stress disorder flashback, they're transported back in time to the traumatic event like war. So everything around them, whether it's the visual sights, whether it's sounds, whether it's the feeling of panic, feels absolutely real.
In court, we heard from his wife about when he was in Afghanistan.
She describes how he changed upon his return from the war zone.
He came home in 2009 and there'd been some sort of a skirmish or a scuffle with somebody else while he was in the army, and that meant that he was sent home without having a chance to decompress, which most military people do. After they've been to somewhere like Afghanistan, they go on a kind of a holiday and they decompress and try and put it all behind them, but Colin Reeves didn't get the chance to do that because he was sent straight home. I think it was a very sad trial, and there were bits of it that were very difficult to cover. Certainly the audio of the moment the Chappells were murdered was incredibly difficult to hear.
The sound of Jennifer's dying screams shocks everyone present.
Family members left the court for those moments, but we heard it, and I don't think I'll ever forget what I heard in that courtroom when Mr. and Mrs. Chappell's last moments were played out.
I think I allowed myself to listen to it for closure. It didn't sound like Jennifer, but obviously you knew it was. And it was horrifying.
Reeves may have refused to comment under interrogation, but the 999 call he made is a key piece of evidence, played to the jury by the prosecution.
Tell me exactly what's happened.
I went round.
Yeah.
With a knife.
Okay.
I've stabbed both of them.
Alright. What kind of knife did you use?
It was a dagger.
So you stabbed them both several times?
Yes.
The jury's reaction to listen to that call was disbelief, and it really focused them about what we're dealing with here. You've got 2 people that are dead, and a man phoning the police to say, this is what I've done.
I felt very angry listening to his voice from the call, thinking that he's just taken 2 wonderful people off this planet. He's orphaned 2 children. I was confused. If you've just gone and done that, why would you call the police?
The court is once again packed as Colin Reeves takes the stand. He reads from a pre-prepared statement.
He described feeling ashamed and disgusted by what he had done. He said he couldn't believe that he had taken the Chappells away from their children and left their children with no parents. And he just seemed completely remorseful for what he had done and really confused by his behaviour.
I was crying at it, not because it was sad, because I was so angry. I was like, how can he stand up on the stand and read that out? I don't think there's anything he could to have made me feel better at all.
After hearing nearly 2 weeks of evidence, the jury retires to consider its verdict.
We were sat there, and it felt like time was just going so slowly.
The jury takes just over 5 hours to reach their conclusion.
Reeves' proposal and that of his defence team that he had post-traumatic stress disorder was rejected. If he was suffering from a flashback at the time of the Christmas light celebration, he would have acted out aggressively, potentially, at that moment in time. It doesn't make sense to me that he would have had that experience, then managed to drive all the way home and still be agitated and still be in the midst of a flashback. And it also wouldn't explain why he attacked his neighbours.
We all sat with Jennifer at the grave and listened to the sentencing on the phone. We felt it was something that we wanted to be with Jen. We couldn't take her with us, so we went and sat with her.
The judge sentences Reeves to 38 years in prison, telling him, "You stabbed your victims in their own home and left their children as orphans."
And it was a huge sigh of relief.
And all of us just in unison, tears streaming down our faces because we couldn't react.
I was satisfied that justice had been obtained for Jennifer and Stephen and their children and their family.
I'm fascinated by Colin Reeves' actual mental state at the time of the killings. He strikes me as somebody who's actually a very paranoid individual, possibly related to the trauma that he's seen. There were marital difficulties, and he potentially was on the verge of splitting up with his wife. So I think maybe he harboured some anger and resentment, potentially towards her, but because he loves her, he instead is displacing it onto the neighbours.
Not long after the trial ends, Rhonda, Jennifer's sister, has a baby daughter.
She's named after my sister because I wanted her name to carry on. I didn't want it to get stuck. She deserved to carry on, even if it means I'm going to be raising a little version of my big sister.
My first ever school was over in the distance there. That's where I met Jennifer. But this whole town tells the story of Jennifer, and one of her favourite views is of the tour. This is my favourite photograph that I have of Jennifer. It's Jennifer and Stephen on their wedding day. They are really, really good memories. Really good memories. It's not a sadness. When I look at them, it's sad that I can't make more.
When you hear there's a murder, it can frighten people.
I was so shocked that something like that would happen in a lovely village like this.
They seemed to be happy with each other, everyone loved her, and she got along with everyone.
There were concerns about her welfare. The alarm bells were raised.
They had heard things happening, shouting, fights.
It was weird. It's as if he was trying to tell us something.
He went off on what can only be described as a drinking and drugs binge. Ultimately, it led to the tragic death of a lovely, caring wife.
Lovely woman who was taken away from us by a horrible, sadistic man.
Situated in the stunning rolling wolds of North Lincolnshire lies the peaceful village of Worleby.
I've lived in Worleby for 48 years. It's a really nice, quiet village. Everybody seems to know everybody. We get on really well.
Last year we won the best kept village. It's a nice little village, plenty of activities, plenty going on. It's so quiet, it's a little rural idyll, if you like. It's like going back in time living here. There's very little crime, it's beautiful, and it's a wonderful place to live for young families or retired people. We've got all of them here.
Friendly community, everybody seemed like pretty much okay, you know.
There's a lot of people who help each other, so there is quite a lot of good community atmosphere.
And it is a lovely place to live. It's really nice.
So it's the ideal place for Ian Hamer and wife Joanne to set up home.
We're fairly new to the village. I think they've been here about 5 years in total.
I think I met her once. She seemed a really nice lady.
Joanne in particular seems to throw herself into village life.
Joanne was liked by everyone on the road. Outgoing, always out on the street, sort of speaking to each other. Ian, you would never see.
he would be in his home quite a lot. Joanne, complete opposite. Everyone loved her, a really welcoming woman, and she got along with everyone. And so people wanted to open up to her, and that's why I think she quickly integrated into Worthy and loved living.
Joanne also has a successful career at the local council where she manages their healthy lifestyle service. After 6 years there, she's risen to become the public face of their healthy living campaigns.
She was quite a bright, some would say brilliant person who had a quite substantial job working with the local authority, and really independently minded in some respects.
Just a lovely woman who did wonders for the council. Everyone loved her at the council, and no one had a word to say about her.
Ian Hamer, Joanne's husband of 27 years, works as a self-employed business consultant.
He worked in many businesses and earning money here and there, and to sustain a reasonable living. You know, he had a nice place in Worlby, quite an expensive area to live in, so he must have been doing okay in his profession, I guess. They seemed to be happy with each other. Friends and family said that there was a good couple for the large part. They married a long time, nice family, 3 kids. It was all seemingly going well.
But what seems like an idyllic life is about to change.
Humberside Police, what's your emergency?
Humberside Police are called after Joanne fails to turn up for work. Her elderly mother has also been trying to reach her, to no avail.
They did speak most days, if not every day, because her mother was very ill as well, and Joanne used to help to look after her, and that raised sufficient concern for her to ring the police.
There were concerns about her welfare. The alarm bells were raised.
And a concern for welfare incident was generated, which resulted in the police attending.
Police make their way over to the family home. When they knock on the door, there's no answer. So the officers break in. When they search through the house, nothing could prepare police for what they find in the master bedroom. Joanne Hamer's lying lifeless on her bed.
Medical professionals will have been called immediately. Monitors would have been placed on to see if there's any signs of heart trace or anything. Any chance whatsoever that resuscitation could take place.
They had discovered she was dead. It's apparent she'd been killed from the scene where she was left, and there was blood at the scene as well.
Joanne had been strangled by her dressing gown cord.
That's when we're looking at securing evidence within that scene.
Teams of police descend on Worlby. The quiet village has never seen anything like it.
When I came back from work, there was police cars, vans, and I'm saying, what's going on? What on earth's all the police doing here? Something happened, and then when I got home and my daughter texted me and said she'd seen it, that there'd been a murder. I just couldn't believe it. I was so shocked that something like that would happen in a lovely village like this. You don't expect it.
As word spreads fast through the neighbourhood, the local newspaper gets wind of an incident in Worlby. Reporter Charlie Wilson heads to the scene.
So you're like, okay, we've got a big story. Let's get there first. Let's be quick. Let's be first. So we got down there. We were the first people there. Very quickly, it was evident this could be a very serious, scary incident. I've never reported on a murder before. That's the first time that's happened to me. So it was a case of doing it really delicately, respectfully, and just trying to build up what happened, really.
Soon the news is spreading beyond the boundaries of the village.
Maybe an hour later, you get the likes of ITV, BBC, Sky coming down, and that's when it was like, whoa, okay, people out on the road, like, wondering what's going on. Everyone was shocked to see the amount of media attention.
You just don't get this sort of thing in these sort of villages.
Yeah, I was quite shocked, really. You would never think that something would happen in a small community like this. I couldn't believe it.
Everybody was shocked. It didn't seem right. Something like that would happen here. You hear about it in cities, but in a little quiet Lincolnshire village, you just don't expect it at all.
Joanne's family are left devastated by the news, and her colleagues at work are also reeling.
Truly sad. I spoke to a few of them. They were just in pieces, of course I would be. My colleague who they loved dearly, and I really did love her. It was tough for him, it was very tough.
And it dawns on Joe's village that there's a killer living in their midst.
I think some people were a little bit upset. They were locking the doors a bit more quickly. I think the first reaction is alarm, because when you hear there's a murder but you don't know the circumstances, and it can frighten people into thinking we've got a killer at large who's going to cause more trouble. You're quite fearful about what it could mean and what the implications for the future are.
It was very awful to hear that it had happened in our village. It's frightening. It really is.
With fear spreading quickly throughout the village, Humberside Police needs to work fast to establish who committed this horrendous crime. And first, they look at Joanne's home life.
This marriage on the surface, to all intents and purposes, would have looked like a stable, normal marriage without too many problems. The reality was quite different.
What I heard was that their marriage wasn't great by the people on the road who lived there, because they had heard things happening, let's just say, whether it be shouting, fights.
It turns out Joanne and Ian had recently had a trial separation, but then Joanne decided to return to the family home.
Joanne Hamer had sought to see if she could give the relationship one last chance. This was part of her trying to make the relationship work.
This new information puts husband Ian in a new light.
Maybe Joanne tried to keep certain things to herself to hide what was really going on at home to save her marriage.
With Ian Hamer nowhere to be seen, police suspicions are starting to build.
We do know in this particular case that a neighbour had reported an argument in the morning between them.
I spoke to the woman who heard the incident around 4 o'clock in the morning, around that time. She had heard screams, shouts for help.
And then the argument ceased.
Police launch an urgent public appeal to help them find Joanne's husband. They need to track down Ian Hamer, and fast. In the quiet Lincolnshire village of Werleby, police have launched a murder hunt. Mother of 3, Joanne Hamer, has been found strangled in her bed. Husband Ian has mysteriously disappeared since a row reported by neighbours in the early hours of the morning. And this doesn't seem to be the first, either.
I guess people on the road had heard these things where it really went bad, to say the least. None of the neighbours who I spoke to liked him at all.
With Ian Hamer now under suspicion, Humberside Police make an urgent appeal for his whereabouts. They release the details of his car, a white BMW 5 Series. They also warn the public not to approach him.
Once a decision had been made by the senior investigating officer that Ian Hamer was a suspect for this crime, then a manhunt would have taken place. They don't know at the moment where he is, but there must be certain fast-track actions raised to secure his arrest. You know, checks with family and friends. Where does he usually go to? Where does he work? Checks with hospitals as well. If he's got a mobile phone, has he made any calls? We may be able to cell site to where he's located and instigate an area search. He's clearly got use of a vehicle in this case. So, you know, we'd be putting the vehicle details onto the automatic number plate recognition ANPR system. And as soon as that vehicle passes an ANPR camera, then that will send an alert to the police. All these inquiries made to trace and arrest Ian Hamer.
The cleaner was the last person with her and had disappeared from the scene. So the investigation then was focusing on putting that picture around what had happened between them. And then going further back, what had happened between them, not just on that night, but also in the period leading up to this.
Detectives put Ian Hamer under the microscope.
The picture that emerged from witnesses was of somebody who was supremely self-assured, self-confident, and superficially was, or at least on the face of it, was somebody who was quite engaging and interesting. But those same people always spoke about, the more they got to know him, there appeared to be another side to him. And they also described how, over times, he could present as being very self-interested and, I suppose, conceited. So there was somebody who could, when he wanted to present in a way which was superficially attractive, but the more people got to know him, there was more there was to him which was unattractive in terms of him being controlling, perhaps aggressive.
And after speaking to Joanne's family and friends, it turns out Hamer has a checkered history.
There have been a number of previous reports made indicating domestic violence. You know, he was reported to have ripped up her wedding dress.
Most reports of him tearing up a teddy bear which was sentimental to her.
You know, this is really significant in a case such as this.
The police have been called out on many occasions, but as is so often the case, they weren't really ever progressed. Part of that was because of the approach of the family to try and manage what was happening within the family. The personality of Joanne Hamer was, tragically, to try and make it work at all times.
When you've married someone for so long, you want to, make things work. And she shouldn't be wrongly thought about for wanting to make her marriage with her husband of 27 years and 3 children work. It's just that he was so far gone and so far twisted.
There are a number of occasions where she left him, but he managed to persuade her to come back. And I've investigated, sadly, domestic homicides where controlling and abusive husbands have tried to isolate their wives, and we know that Hamer did this and, dissuading her from contact with family and friends.
In 2013, police discover this came to a head when Ian Hamer started divorce proceedings, blaming the involvement of Joanne's mother in their relationship.
So, he was antagonistic towards his wife's relationship with her own mother. So he was all about controlling and being abusive towards his wife and driving a wedge between her and family and friends. And it just shows this control, coercive and bullying and domineering nature of Ian Hamer towards his wife within that relationship. And that isn't uncommon in domestic homicide cases, sadly.
It seems the couple reconciled, but then in 2017, things take another turn for the worse. Ian Hamer starts accusing his wife of having affairs. Police analysis of Joanne's smartphone reveals something even more sinister. Around this time, Hamer hacked into his wife's handset so he could track her every move.
He would apparently follow her to work, follow her on nights out with friends, monitor her phone on where she was going, where she was at, wouldn't let her do certain things, apparently, wear certain things, and she was a bit closed off.
This is how obsessive he was about his wife and his jealousy and his thought processes, that he wanted to accuse her of extramarital affairs.
And a probe of the couple's bank accounts shows Ian's disturbingly tight grip over her purse strings.
He was keeping money from her, basically, sort of giving her an allowance of what to spend and what she could do, and wouldn't let her go out at certain times. All the bearings of, a toxic, horrible relationship. Obviously, she felt trapped. She felt like she needed to get out, and she tried to do that. He wouldn't let her.
In the weeks before her death, Joanne had moved out and was considering buying a property. But she was persuaded by Ian to return, 2 days before her murder. It was on this day, the 4th of May, that police background checks reveal a disturbing incident. Ian Hamer had been arrested for drink driving.
As well as being controlling and abusive towards his wife, he seemed to be losing control of his own life in some respects. He was drinking more heavily. So there's a clear pattern there of his own destructive behaviour escalating within himself, and particularly abusing alcohol as part of that process.
Investigators discover it's not only drink that's fueling Hamer's abusive behaviour.
He had a cocaine problem that had become prevalent in his life over the last 2 or 3 years, and that became worse and worse and worse. When he picked up this addiction, maybe his personality changed because of that, and his health, mental and physical, deteriorated.
This businessman Ian Hamer's respectable lifestyle is now questionable. And when they learn what he did in the hours following the estimated time of Joanne's murder, they're convinced they have the right man. Soon after that last blazing row reported by neighbours, Joanne's mother said she had an unsettling phone call with her son-in-law.
When family members tried to contact her the following morning, he told them that Joanne Hamer couldn't speak to them because she was unwell, and as he framed it, she had a sore throat.
Chillingly, police believe Joanne was already dead when Hamer made that calculating comment.
Just, like, sick. Like, strangle her, and then you gotta tell her mum that she can't come because she's got a bad throat. Like, sadistic. Like, horrible. When you hear that, it's just like, I don't know what to say. Horrible.
And it appears Hamer used the same story again.
His son had attended at the marital home at a time when Joanne Hamer was probably dead, and that's when he first introduced that concept of her having a sore throat when he knew she'd been strangled and she was probably dead.
He also told his son as well when he was at the house to go and buy some lozenges because his mother was sleeping, she had a bad throat, knowing full well that he'd strangled her, which now we know what happened, was particularly chilling in this case. To say that she'd got a bad throat, I mean, how callous is that?
And therefore the question is, was that him being cruel or was it him buying time?
This cunning ploy tells police they have a calculating killer on the run, who wants to stay one step ahead of them. But it's only a matter of time before a false move by Hamer would reveal where he's hiding. Worleby, North Lincolnshire. Murder suspect Ian Hamer is on the run after his wife Joanne is found strangled in their bedroom.
This is a man who, at this point, everyone in the area is looking for and knows that, okay, this is a manhunt.
As police cast their search net wider, reporters like Charlie Wilson are on the ground looking for leads. Suddenly, that morning, there's word from nearby Barton-upon-Humber.
We heard news that there might be an incident in Barton where he might be. And so we went to Barton and then heard he was seen in a pub.
Barton is about 8 miles away, and it's quite big, quite a lot of people, so it's the obvious place to go. You've got the Humber Bridge. From the Humber Bridge, you've got the whole of Yorkshire to go into and disappear. It would be a logical place to go.
A resident next to one of the town's car parks spots a man behaving erratically.
He was basically swaying around in the car park and making noise, acting strange.
Not realising it's Humberside Police's most wanted, Ian Hamer, the woman calls 999 to report a disturbance.
I think she reported that he was on Spice and shouting. Obviously, he was actually drunk, intoxicated, or whatever he was on. He would wander around the car park, shout.
A lone patrol officer heads to the car park to move this wild drunkard on.
Police basically just found a man shouting and being strange and realised this is Ian Hamer. Arrested him straight away.
The officer single-handedly tackles Hamer to the floor, then restrains him whilst he radios for assistance.
I have to say the actions of the officer that arrested him were exemplary, real bravery shown in tackling this individual. And when he was arrested, the actual had to detain him. This is a real force. It's not an inner-city force with the same number of resources.
Meanwhile, roving reporter Charlie Wilson is close by. Suddenly, he's alerted to the breaking news.
A woman sent me a picture of a man on the floor being sat on by a police officer. Okay, that's our man. So we know exactly where it is. I'm actually at a shop getting a drink of Lucozade. Run around with my Lucozade in hand. So I arrive at the scene. Ian Hamer is being sat on by a lone police officer, waiting for his fellow officers to come. So to come round the corner and see a police officer sat
on who we believe is Ian Hamer was just wild, yeah.
After struggling to contain Hamer for nearly 5 minutes alone, backup finally arrives for the officer.
They must have got half a second after I came around the corner, and then police swarmed on him, got him away, and sort of like ushered us away. Clearly intoxicated, drunk or drugs or both, not in his right frame of mind, in the clothes that he was wearing the night before. We get him up, handcuff him, escort him to the back of the van.
Meanwhile, news of an arrest for Joanne's murder filters back to her village of Werleby. Residents can now breathe a sigh of relief.
I was just pleased he'd been caught for the crime, but to then find out that it was her husband, it was a real shock.
Detectives start to piece together what Hamer's been up to in the last 24 hours since fleeing the murder scene.
He went off on what can only be described as a drink and drugs binge. We know that from the inquiries that were made. Laughing and joking, certainly no signs of remorse or distress.
Bar owner Pauline Dickinson reported serving Ian Hamer. But when he arrived on her premises, she had no idea he was on the run.
He came in the pub around 5:30, never seen him before, asked for a pint of Carling. He got his pint of Carling and went and sat down out the way of everybody.
Next, Hamer returns to the bar and starts to hit the spirits. Soon the conversation heads in a strange and unsettling direction.
Put the tequila on the bar and he literally looked either side of himself, leant over the bar and said to me, "Why did the Mexican push his wife off the cliff?" So I did the same as he did, looked either side and said, "To kill her." He went, "No, you know it." I said, "Yeah, I do." He paid for his drinks, went and sat down. He came back to the bar 10-15 minutes later and stood there.
Then Pauline clocked something sinister.
He hid his arm behind, but I'd already seen that he'd got scratches. I don't know which way, it was just you could see scratches on his wrist. One of my customers noticed scratches as well and went, "Oh, he's one of those he's been harming." One of my customers said to him, "Hey up mate, what are you doing in here? Are you from here?" He says, "No," he said, "I'm not from here. I'm just going through a breakup with my wife." So he went, "Oh, right, sorry to hear that, mate." He went, "Yeah, she's taken me for all me money." So he said, "Don't be sad." He said, "Have another drink." So one of the customers bought him a drink.
Over the next few hours, Hamer knocks back the drinks, laughing and joking with the regulars.
So he did about 2 more jokes to the point where the customer said, "No wonder your wife left you." He got jokes like that. He went, "That's maybe why she's gone then."
Quite significantly as well, he was seen to take his wedding ring off, so he knows what's happened. He knows that his wife's dead, so, that's quite a significant gesture. And that was done, merely hours after he'd actually killed his wife. And it just shows the kind of individual that he is.
Some of the pub regulars seem unsettled by this customer they've never seen before, who has struck up conversation with another man at the bar.
My 2 regulars, they finished their drinks. I went, "Right, you 2 go in." I went, "No, we're not going." Says, "Why?" "We're not leaving you with them 2. We don't know the other guys, so we're not leaving you with them." I went, "Oh, don't be daft. What are these 2 going to do to me? I'll soon have them out the door, don't worry." So they went, "No, we're staying." So they stayed.
Soon the bar's regulars saw glimpses of another side to their joking acquaintance, who's going by a false name, Sebastian.
So we played pool against one of my regulars, who is a really good player. And during the game, there was banter going on. But right at the end, when the customer knew he was going to win, he picked up the broom that I'd got out ready to clean up and potted Black with the broom. Which Sebastian said, "That is so disrespectful to do that." He said, "I don't think so, I still won." I don't think he was very pleased, and finished his drink and he did actually walk out, you just get a feeling about people. You know if they're not okay. I don't think he would have done any harm, but who knows?
Next morning, Pauline's alerted to the terrifying news on Facebook that the customer she had served the night before isn't called Sebastian, but Ian Hamer. And he's wanted by police for murder.
My reaction was, oh my God. So I phoned a policeman that I know, and within 5-10 minutes, I think, they'd got him.
Soon the joke Hamer told Pauline about a man pushing his wife off a cliff takes on a sinister new meaning.
It was weird, but they were just jokes like, you know what, a kid would come home and tell you jokes, but it's not until the following day, and I actually thought to myself, it's as if he was trying to tell us something. I don't know. It's not until the following day that things fell into place.
Despite his intoxicated state, Ian Hamer engages with the police at the point of his arrest.
He said something like, it wasn't murder, it was manslaughter. Something along those lines. I heard the word manslaughter.
He did make a very significant statement, an unsolicited comment to the officer indicating that he wasn't guilty of murder, it was diminished responsibility, so he was already offering up a statutory defence to murder.
After 24 hours on the run, Ian Hamer has been arrested in North Lincolnshire on suspicion of murder. Just hours after killing his wife, Joanne, Hamer was spotted in Pauline's bar, just 7 miles away from the crime scene.
You just would not have thought he'd actually killed his wife and just come blazingly into a bar a few miles away having a drink. When you hear them things, it's like, really? Could you be so cold-blooded and heartless?
When police take him in for questioning, Hamer repeats his claims that he committed manslaughter due to mental illness. But one throwaway comment soon after his arrest suggests this is a cunning ploy to reduce any impending prison sentence.
And what was a telling piece of evidence? He said to the officers who were tending to him, this was manslaughter, and asked this question, have we done enough for diminished responsibility? This was a man who was trying to present a picture of being so mentally unwell that he was not to be held fully responsible for his wife's death.
This is clearly somebody who's a very manipulative, selfish individual, and his response, he's already trying to escape justice for his crime as soon as he's arrested, and he's clearly given a great deal of thought to that before his arrest. And Ian Hamer clearly only cares about one person, and that's Ian Hamer.
In spite of Hamer's claims, he's charged with his wife's murder. Months later, mental health experts are brought in to provide a true picture of Hamer's state of mind.
After his arrest, he was subsequently interviewed by two psychiatrists to explore whether there were any mental illness elements that would lead to diminished responsibility.
They ask him probing questions about his relationship with wife Joanne.
He began to present what was ultimately going to be his defence. He accepted he had killed her. But in the context where he said he didn't want to do it, used a phrase that it was some sort of psychotic episode.
Then Hamer starts to go on the offensive, claiming he is the real victim in the abusive marriage.
Ian Hamer claimed that his wife had taunted him to say that children weren't his. He made a slur on his wife's character, saying she was engaged in extramarital affairs. There's no evidence of this.
He would say that she would see other people, that she would be on dating apps and she would find other men more attractive than him. And anyone who knew Joanne knows that that's just completely laughable. And Jo, was the most loyal woman you could meet. Sort of making up excuses in his head, I guess, to find ways and motives to do what he did.
Then his claims turn even more extreme.
He made plain that he was himself a victim of domestic abuse. You know, he claims that she hit him over the head with a shoe. We've got no information about any injury, or certainly any serious injury to him. He claims she threw a phone at him. Again, there was no injury that we're aware of to support that. This was all seen as a tissue of lies. And clearly the people that knew Joanne had not seen any evidence of this whatsoever. And the only person who could suggest that this had taken place was Ian Hamer himself.
But soon, the psychiatrists start to uncover Hamer's true colours.
What was actually found by two psychiatrists, one diagnosing with morbid jealousy and one with obsessive jealousy. But clearly, there wasn't an element of diminished responsibility for his actions. From the facts we know about the case and his behaviour and his actions, come as no surprise, because we can see the way that he jealously controlled his wife's movements and behaviour, you know, a real controlling nature.
And when detectives scan Hamer's smartphone, the picture he painted as the victim starts to crumble. Just days before Joanne's murder, they find texts he sent to another woman promising jewellery.
Things he was doing, he would accuse her of. He was seeing other women, that came out. He was on dating apps. He would accuse her of the things that he was doing exactly the same.
We do know that Ian Hamer had affairs, he had one-night stands, and he accused his wife of the same. There's no evidence to suggest that that was the case.
But investigators are blown away when they uncover the name Hamer uses on his dating profile. It sounds strikingly familiar.
He'd use a fake name. Sebastian, apparently. He would use to women wherever he was going to maybe go out on these dates and meet people. And yeah, to use a fake name, like you're obviously up to something that's not good.
15 months after Joanne's murder, husband Ian Hamer is finally put on trial at Hull Crown Court. He pleads guilty to manslaughter on the grounds of diminished responsibility, but the prosecution sets out the case for cold-blooded murder.
So it was a consideration for the jury of whether that was a man demonstrating real symptoms of mental illness, or whether it was somebody using any illness to formulate a defence.
The court is told the torrid details of the abuse Hamer inflicted on his wife.
The question that was raised with the jury is whether or not, by the time of the killing, he in effect wanted to get rid of his wife so he could move on, but he needed control of that situation, and that's how we presented the case.
As the trial progresses, even Hamer's own children take to the stand against their own father to describe the abuse suffered in their own home.
One of them spoke of being aware of that from a very young age and becoming increasingly toxic and abusive. You then see the horrible human side of this, because they're being required to give evidence against one of their parents, and in circumstances where they've lost the other one. And for them, there's no good outcome to any of this.
Following a heart-wrenching 3-week trial, the jury retires to consider their verdict.
The verdict of the jury was that Ian Hamer was guilty of murder. Therefore, they rejected that idea that his mental state was such that he was not able to exercise proper judgment and control.
He designed everything, including his response to the arresting officer, to make out that this was the case, that it was diminished responsibility. Thankfully, the jury didn't buy that, and they saw through Ian Hamer's excuses for what they were, just excuses.
Hamer's jailed for life with a minimum of 22 years. At the time of sentencing, the judge takes into account the years of domestic violence Joanne suffered at the hands of her husband, and his abusive control over her finances.
The judge actually commented that he believed that one of the main motives in this case was he was afraid if the relationship ended, that he would lose a significant amount of money. Money to which Joanne in the Law of England and Wales was entitled to. Those were the family finances that should have been split accordingly. He didn't want that to happen, and he murdered his wife as a result.
Kill someone, go out drinking, using drugs, and joking about what he did. He obviously deserves to be locked away for the rest of his life, and I'm glad that's the case.
Killers like Ian Hamer are so manipulative and so self-centred, and ultimately it led to the tragic death of a lovely, caring wife. But there's only one person to blame for that, and it's Ian Hamer.
Years later, the sadness of the case is still felt by those in the quiet Lincolnshire village of Worleby.
There'll always be some weird, I guess, aura for people still living there, knowing that what happened in that house happened. The worst crime you can commit. And I guess it opened a lot of people's eyes to thinking that it can happen anywhere.
I feel so sorry for the family. You know, one act like that and it's wrecked the family. And it's something they'll have to live with, I'm afraid to say, and it's not very nice.
Ian Hamer is definitely a master manipulator. Lovely woman who was taken away from us by a horrible, sadistic man. It was something you never expected to report on, especially in Worleby. I never met Joanne, but I know she's a lovely woman. But, you know, she deserved a lot better than Ian Hamer. Truly sad story, a sad situation. All you can do is just hope the best for the Hamer family, hope the children. Just an awful situation, which Ian Hamer will spend the rest of his life in jail for.
Good morning and welcome to another week of Crime Watch Live.
Today, the tragic case of 87-year-old Eileen Blaine, who died after being viciously attacked at her home.
This burglar might think he's killed my mum, but he's killed us inside. I just hope that another family like ours doesn't go through this for the sake of 30 quid and a wedding ring.
Can you help detectives solve this awful crime?
He's been jamming the switchboard both here and the incident.
To remind you, this was the Induction and Radio Drop campaign and the handgun debate. Hello and welcome to Crime Watch. Well, people rang in giving the stage this fantastic responsibility.
Hello and welcome to the programme where we are coming to you from our studios in the Welsh capital.
We have got a very busy show lined up for you today, including trying to find the rightful owners of this catalogue of stolen goods.
We have a jaw-dropping film about how police caught a gang causing terror as they embarked on a stealing spree, nicking almost £4 million worth of cars.
We had this group of 6 or 7 individuals, some of them as young as 15, who were responsible for committing a large amount of car crime across Manchester. Pretty much £4 million worth of cars in a 10-month period.
And how a team of brave officers put their lives on the line when they came face to face with a man carrying explosives.
Put the gun down!
It had wires hanging out of the top of the bag. At that point I realised that it was an IED.
As always, police and our team are close by, ready to answer your calls. You can find our contact details using the QR code below, or call us on 08000 468 999. Text us on 63399, start with the word crime, leave a space, then write your message. Or email us at cwl@bbc.co.uk.
First this morning, it's a heartbreaking appeal on one of society's most vulnerable. A savage attack claimed the life of 87-year-old Eileen Blaine. This, of course, is a very moving film.
He just wouldn't stop hitting me, that was the main thing. Just asked him to stop, but he wouldn't. He just said he wanted to go all the time. And it was just a nightmare.
Family has always been at the heart of 87-year-old Eileen Blaine's life.
She enjoyed family coming round, she enjoyed seeing our children born, my children, my brother's children. Mum would be the one that we turn to all the time.
For 63 years, she was happily married to husband Andrew until his death in 2003.
My dad was everything to my mum. It was very difficult when my father first passed away, but my mum being as she was, she became resilient, she got tough.
With her husband gone, Eileen treasured one item in particular which held special memories of him.
The wedding ring meant a great deal to my mum. She only has to look at it and it reminds her of my father and the life that they had together.
On Friday the 3rd of February 2017, Eileen went shopping at her local supermarket.
She was very fit and agile for her age. On a weekly basis, she'd get a little shopping trolley and go up to the shop at the top of the road.
CCTV from the supermarket shows her picking up her groceries.
You don't realise how independent she was. She used to get on buses and take the dog a walk. And at 87, when you think about it, you wouldn't think she'd be doing that, would you?
As she's coming home with the shopping, she thought she saw the window cleaner, so she gave him a little wave, came home.
After she unpacked her shopping, there was a knock at the back door.
Because she'd only just seen the window cleaner, she automatically thought he was coming to get paid.
But it wasn't him.
And that's when he punched her straight in the face. She didn't have time to do anything, and then he hit her again.
He was relentless, he would not stop. He was on the floor, and he then continued to kick her.
Eileen begged the man to stop, but he kept on, demanding gold and money.
Mum raised her hands like that to say, I've got no gold, I've got no money, and unfortunately he saw a wedding ring on her finger.
Ripping the wedding ring off her hand, he dragged Eileen into the living room, where he threw her Jack Russell Sammy into the wall.
At this point he said to me, Mum, you're not getting out of here alive.
Eileen was trapped. But when her attacker went upstairs to search for more valuables, she seized her opportunity.
The first thing she could think of was pick the little dog up and run out the front door. And she ran straight to her neighbour's house.
They called the police, but Eileen's attacker fled before they arrived.
Well, she had bruises all over her face, and her eyes and her nose.
It was only when she went to hospital and she had x-rays that they then found out she sustained 3 broken ribs and a broken vertebrae in the base of her spine where he'd been kicking her. After 5 weeks in hospital, she was then really turning the corner.
Despite her injuries, Eileen seemed to be making a good recovery.
She was looking forward to getting home, seeing a little dog.
And on the 31st of March 2017, doctors finally allowed her to go home.
All she dreamt about, or really thought about, was, I'll be going home tomorrow, I'll be going home tomorrow. So when she got told she could go home, she was absolutely happy.
But just a single day after her return home, Eileen passed away.
Well, I've lost my mum. I've lost a friend. I've lost everything. This burglar might think he's killed my mum, but he's killed us inside.
Started chucking me about and I couldn't get up and ask him to stop. He wouldn't. Yeah, it was quite nasty. He said we weren't going to get out, you see. He was going to make sure we didn't. But it was just a nightmare.
We've lost somebody to speak to, somebody to confide in. You can't quantify that.
I just hope that someone does catch him in the end. Another family like ours doesn't go through this for the sake of 30 quid and a wedding ring. What a price to pay.
Well, I'm joined now by DI Paul Davis from Greater Manchester Police. Good to have you with us this morning, Paul. This is such a senseless, brutal attack. What more can you tell us about the investigation so far?
It is. We're treating it as a murder investigation.
Eileen was 87 years of age, very active, very independent, and she was just going about her weekly shopping when she was then attacked in her own home.
It's shocking. It really, really is. We've actually got a map. Just explain what we're seeing here.
This is a local area of Stretford that covering the Barton Road is the main road through. You can see Eileen's address, and it's a very short distance to the local shop where she does shopping and then returns.
Yeah, just carrying out her usual routine.
Yeah.
What on earth could have motivated somebody to carry out an attack like this?
I believe the motive is robbery. The male who entered used force and violence by assaulting Eileen in the address, then demanded cash and gold.
And we can just see some of the images, Paul, of the injuries that poor Eileen sustained. Just terrible. We talked about items that were stolen. One thing that was mentioned, which was of huge sentimental value, was Eileen's wedding ring. Is that something that's managed to be recovered?
We've not recovered it, and we desperately want to recover it for the family. That's what they wanted. It was given to Eileen by her late husband, Andrew, on their wedding day. So it's incredibly important that we get that back.
Absolutely,
Go ahead with
the description.
The description is it's a gold wedding band with a crosshatch design on it.
Yeah, and we heard from Eileen's sons, David and John, in the film. It would mean so much to them. Let's talk about the suspect. What description can you give us of this person?
He's a white male. He's 5'8", slim build, and he was wearing a black coat with a hood over the top of his face.
So, Paul, for people that are watching today, how can they help with this appeal? What are you looking for?
I'm looking for the community of Stretford to come forward, really. 8 years have passed since this incident. People may have not felt brave enough to come forward and give information at the time, and I ask them to think and just pick up the phone and call us.
Absolutely. And over time, allegiances change. People might have fallen out and now be thinking, actually, it's time to do the right thing.
It is, yeah. I believe that this person would have confided in somebody close to them. 8 years have passed. I want them to search their conscience, do the right thing for the family, and come forward so we can get justice for Eileen and that family.
So important. Just finally to note as well, Greater Manchester Police are offering a £50,000 reward, aren't they, for any information leading to the arrest and conviction of the individual responsible.
Yes, there is.
Paul, thanks so much for coming in and telling us more. Now, ways to get in touch with us are on the screen. Just stand by the clock, or you can contact Greater Manchester Police, which is on the number below.
Later on, we're going to be chatting to Andy and Jim from Healthier Heroes, a charity helping ex-veterans get back on their feet. Now though, I'm with DS Charlie Punning from Avon and Somerset Police, who has this vast collection of stolen items you can see here that he wants to find the owners for. Charlie, it really is an incredible display, but how did you come into police possession of all these items?
Well, good morning, Rav. My team and I were investigating a large series of burglaries across the Somerset area that happened between August and November 2024, although we believe that some of the burglaries happened back beyond December 2023.
We see on the map here, actually, every pink spot you can see, you believe, is a burglary that was being committed by the same group of individuals. There's a massive amount there, isn't there? Huge.
Yeah, you can see how widespread it is and how many people that it's actually affected.
Yeah, so who do you think was responsible for these crimes?
So we...
you had a group of individuals.
Yep, so the group, they were a prolific group of individuals that sometimes committed between 3 or 4 burglaries in a single night. They targeted large rural properties and sometimes businesses and farmhouses as well.
Yeah.
They would generally scope out the property beforehand, and then on the night of the offending they would enter the grounds and then try the doors or windows and sometimes gain access through sash windows. Once inside, they then stole anything they get their hands on that thought they had any sort of monetary value, which is why we've got such a vast array of property that we've recovered.
Yeah, we're going to come on to this shortly. I just want to know how you actually caught this group, because you've got 2, they're on remand at the moment, you've got 2 that have already pleaded guilty and one awaiting trial in a couple of months' time. How did you finally get them?
Well, we had an idea who was committing the burglaries, and then we had a couple of breaks in the case. We had some warrants sworn out and then executed the warrants where we arrested the 3 people that were charged. And then during those warrants, we were able to seize around 450 items of stolen property. Of those 450, we've managed to repatriate around 100. And
there's a pretty novel way you did this as well, where you're thinking outside the box. You actually hired out a hall, didn't you? And got people to come and have a look at it. Let's have a look at this here. What's happened here?
So we hired a hall for a couple of days. We put all of the items on display so the victims of burglary could come in and have a look, see if they could find any of their property.
And as you say, you got a number of those items back. However, there are still a number outstanding, some of which we've got here. So let's just talk us through what we've got here. We're going to start with this large clock that we've got in the studio. Charlie, what do we know about this here?
So yeah, we have the antique grandfather clock there. We have a silver candelabra.
Just next to me, very distinctive. And with all these items, Charlie, it's not just the value, it's the sentimental value that can be so important to get it back. So we've got the candelabra, as you say. In the centre here on the table, I'm interested with this. What have we got here?
So we've got a very old Bible that dates back to 1816. So, you know, this was stolen along with a number of valuable books as well.
It's going to be very important, and someone's clearly going to want to have this back, I'm sure. If anyone's looking at these and they just say, I want to have another look, where can I get into contact? What should they do?
So I'd urge any victim of burglary for the last couple of years to log on to our website, Aim in the Somerset website, and check out our online gallery where they can scroll through all of the images. And then if they've got a receipt or they can prove provenance, then we'll be delighted to get those items back to them.
Oh, we'd be delighted as well, Charlie. Thank you. Do take a closer look at this selection of stolen items. You can also head to our website, or as you've just heard, the Seized Property Gallery of Avon and Somerset Police's website for the full list.
Next, how a dangerous gang stole millions of pounds worth of cars and were caught thanks to their online bragging.
I've never seen anyone be so brazen about committing crime. They just had no regard for what they were doing. They just saw the cars as pound signs.
On the 23rd of May 2022, in Droylsden, Greater Manchester, police receive a report from a local resident in the early hours of the morning. The detective who investigated the case cannot be identified.
It was a Sunday evening, family time, there was nothing out of the ordinary. Parked outside, they had a Golf GTI. They went to bed as they normally would. They were woken up by a neighbour at around 10 to 2 in the morning. The neighbour had seen the Golf GTI being stolen. They were shaken up at the time. The 4-year-old was really worried, and he had to sleep in their room for a good 6 months after the incident because he was scared that the men were going to come back in.
About an hour later at 3 a.m. in the Chadderton area of Oldham, a local resident was quietly praying at home when they were disturbed by a strange noise.
So he went to investigate, and he was confronted by 2 masked men within his house. Both these men had knives. He saw 2 further males at the rear door. They were shouting, "Give us the R keys, give us the R keys." He had a VW Golf R parked on his drive outside. Having struggled with them, they found his car keys and they all ran out of the house and drove away in his car. After the offence, he was shaken. He was more angry that it had happened, that these lads had broken into his house, targeted him, stole his car, all whilst his family were present. He's since moved house because of this incident.
4 weeks later, on the 16th of June 2022, in Upmill, Oldham, a third incident occurred.
The victim, he'd spent £55,000 on a VW Golf R, treated himself to this really nice car that he'd wanted for a long time. He pulled up at his home address, parked on the drive, and he was removing some items from his boot. 2 men got out of a grey BMW 1 Series, ran to the victim and forcibly shoved him to the floor. They punched him, they threatened to stab him, he hit his head on the flower bed and constantly asked for the keys to his car. One of the males picks up the key, gets into the car, whilst the second male holds the victim down on the ground. He starts the engine, reverses off the victim's drive, colliding with a wall as he does so, leaving the victim on his driveway. One of the neighbours came out with a phone and tried to record the driver of the vehicle as he was driving away. He was really shaken. He had cuts and bruises to his head, but the trauma he went through on his own driveway, I think, affected him mentally than physically. He didn't feel safe in his own home anymore, and because of this, he's had to move.
As the gang got more brazen, their level of violence increased. On the 30th of June, 2 men were dragged out of bed at knife point to hand over the key to their cars.
CCTV showed that the boy's father had woken up because of the commotion and seen his sons outside the address, and he couldn't do anything about it because they kept the door shut. They ran around the front of the house, stole the car, crashed it into another one as they were driving off. To have entered someone's house and dragged them out of bed at knife point was probably the most terrifying incident as part of this investigation I saw.
Suspecting the crimes were the work of the same gang, the team worked closely with the Tactical Vehicle Intercept Unit, who had created a detailed intelligence picture of who could be responsible.
We came together and we had this group of 6 or 7 individuals who were responsible for committing a large amount of car crime across Manchester. A huge amount of car crime. Some of them as young as 15. As we were looking at these incidents and the crimes that had been reported already, how could we link these people to it? They were still out every night committing crime. On one occasion, they stole 4 cars from one address. A lot of the time, they were targeting high-powered vehicles. Other times, they might target what they call dingers or a blender, so a car to go and commit further criminality in. So we started to take them off one by one and try and prioritise who we thought was maybe more dangerous or who was more prolific than the others.
In October 2022, a 17-year-old who can't be named due to his age was arrested.
He had family members that were involved in car crime. He had a device that was used in the keyless thefts of Land Rover or Jaguar vehicles. There was dozens of Range Rovers that they stole in that way. He had a lot of contacts for a 17-year-old.
His phone was analysed and showed him bragging about the cars he'd stolen to a 27-year-old man named Kyle Camp. Camp was already in prison awaiting sentence for 2 burglaries he'd pleaded guilty to. Detectives seized Camp's phone and discovered a raft of incriminating evidence linking him to the gang.
We'd now found someone that was much older, that was obviously orchestrating things. We realised quite quickly that he was one of the males responsible for the robbery in Upper Mill on the 16th of June 22. So I think he was hoping by pleading guilty to the 2 burglaries, and we wouldn't then discover all the crimes that he was involved in over that summer.
Through further digital forensic work and cell site analysis, police were able to gather more damning evidence.
He sent a video, and it showed that Golf GTI on that video, and it showed the full reg of the car that was stolen at the time. It was a bingo moment. We also linked him to the robbery in Chadderton. The phone, as he's using it, pings to masts in that area at the time of the offence.
He also had multiple pictures and messages linking him directly to other crimes.
One incident, we know that Camp threatened a female with a screwdriver, stole a car. A neighbour had tried to block them in. He rammed them out of the way in the stolen car and drove away, and we found messages on his phone boasting about the incident later that day. In another incident, we found that someone had taken a photo of him on a stolen motorbike, posing in the clothes that he'd used to steal the bike in. I've never seen anyone be so brazen.
Police were able to link Camp to 15 burglaries and robberies over a 7-week period during the summer of 2022.
We also showed, due to his age, he was a senior member of that organised crime group responsible for stealing pretty much £4 million worth of cars in a 10-month period.
On the 24th of January 2025, Camp pleaded guilty at Manchester Crown Court to burglary, theft, robbery and handling stolen goods. Sentenced to 14 years and 4 months.
It was a real rewarding job for us all. Although there was a huge amount of evidence on this case, it was made a lot easier by them because they were so vain. They wanted to show off about how great of a criminal they were. It was just idiotic. He got exactly what he deserved.
Just terrifying for the victims, though, targeted by that gang.
Absolutely. But great police work there,
Yes,
the result at the end.
absolutely. Good to get the gang off the streets. We're joined on the sofa now by ex-Army veterans Andy Powell and Jim Barton. They're from Healthier Heroes, a charity providing support for military vets who are experiencing difficult times. Really good to have you both in the studio with us. Thanks so much for coming in. Andy, just to start with you, tell us a bit more about Healthier Heroes and how it all came about.
Sure. So Healthier was formed based on the background of sort of like the difficulties that I faced going through my mental health struggles, addiction, attempted suicides, and basically reaching out for the help and support and not getting it. So it kind of took me 5 years to recover, going through various sort of processes, and Healthy Heroes was formed in 2018 to make sure that no one went through that same process.
It's a horrible thing for anyone to have to go through. Clearly a very, very tough time, Andy. But what sort of support does the organisation offer veterans?
So we offer quite a lot of support, to be fair. And the main thing that we offer is Bancroft House, so it's the accommodation side of it, kind of where Jim lives. So we're taking veterans off the streets, so we're homeless veterans leaving prison who've got nowhere to live, providing that safe space and recovery programs within. So mental health, providing counselling support, drug and alcohol addiction, education, employment and training, a plethora of sort of health and wellbeing activities as well, which my wife Rio runs, who's the co-founder and owner. And so that the package is very vast. There's a lot going on.
You cover so much, which is absolutely fantastic to hear. So how many veterans are you currently working with?
So at the moment we have 21 in Bancroft House. We've got 8 in our move on properties, so 29 at any one time. We were looking to expand. But since December 2020, when Bancroft House was open, 206 veterans have been through our doors, and we're currently supporting 312 veterans and family members across the Northwest and Lancashire, so it's pretty busy.
Yeah,
really
very busy.
Yeah, great to hear. And Jim, you are someone who has had first-hand experience of just how this organisation has helped you and is continuing to help you now. Just tell us a bit about your story.
Yeah, so I mean, sort of lots of my journey, there's sort of similarities to Andy's as well. So I served 15 years with the Royal Anglian Regiment, so an infantry unit. For 9 years of that, I was a combat medic. And unfortunately, back in 2010, I was quite badly injured in Afghanistan. And then, as a knock-on from that, I was eventually medically discharged in 2018. So obviously my career was taken away from me. I was fortunate in the fact that as sort of I had my background in medicine, so I actually went on to experience the ambulance service and joined as a paramedic, which, absolutely loved the job. But unfortunately, because I hadn't been given the support, especially for my historic issues with alcohol and my mental health, in 2019, I had a really severe mental health crisis. And so I turned to alcohol again as that coping mechanism. And unfortunately, a series of catastrophic events then led to me actually going to prison. So I was in prison from December 2019 to December 21, so I did 2 years. But even when I was released, I felt like a rabbit in the headlights. I felt kind of lost, that I didn't really have a purpose or anything, Very much like a lot of us feel when we leave the military, especially when you're medically discharged, I tried my hand as a fibre optics engineer, but then quickly realised that...
In a sense, that wasn't for you.
That was not for me whatsoever. No. So I kind of knocked that one on the head. But then, obviously, unfortunately, Russia obviously invaded Ukraine in February 22. And to be honest, it was something that I felt I had to go and do when Zelensky did that call to arms.
So you felt you got drawn to actually go and...
Yes, so I basically... I booked a one-way ticket, packed my kit, and then I went and joined the International Legion as a combat medic. So I did 7 months out there on various front lines around the country. Unfortunately, I was injured twice in that 7 months, and on my second time, I kind of, to be fair, I was physically and mentally burnt out, and I was ready to come back to the UK and kind of recuperate more than anything. And then it was basically pretty much bang on a year after that was when I was introduced to Andy and to Healthier Heroes.
And they've made a real difference to your life, haven't they?
Yeah, absolute game changer. I mean, I would openly admit, I'll be the first to admit actually, and I'd say 95% of the guys that have been through Bancroft or are still currently there, will openly admit that it's saved their life in some form or another,
It's really good to see how you've turned it around, Jim. It really is, and you seem to be in such a good place now, which is really good to see. And Andy, this is open to men, women, all services?
Yeah, all services, tri-service and families as well. So it's really important that families know that we're there to support them. So it's not just the lads or the ladies that are served, it's a combination of both. So please give us a shout if you need any help. We're here to do that.
Thank you so much for coming in. Honestly, it's been great to hear more. Really appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Great work.
Thank you.
Now, the quick thinking of officers in our next film certainly saved lives when they came up against a man brandishing explosives and a handgun.
I am PC Emma Davies and I work at Hampshire Constabulary. I have a love for the job I don't think I can explain in words.
I'm PC Scott Thompson. The job gives me a fulfilment in regards to helping others.
I don't ever see myself doing anything other than what I do now. Generally, being a police officer, you accept that there's always going to be a level of danger. You are walking into the unknown and you don't know what you're going to be faced with.
You've got to be ready for anything.
On the 28th of August 2023, we'd been tasked to locate suspects. We arrived at an address in Gosport where we were trying to arrest Damian Mazakiewicz because it was reported that he had breached his restraining order. There were no warnings for him. We knew very little about him.
It was just a normal August bank holiday. Sun was shining, it was really warm, not much happening out on the street.
We knew that there was likely to be someone inside that property. I went round to ensure that Mazakiewicz didn't escape out the back.
The officer that had gone in first saw a male coming down the stairs and he had a revolver to his temple.
Put the gun down, put the gun down, put the gun down just now. Do it now, put the gun down. Put the gun down. Put the gun down, do it now.
That's when the adrenaline started to kick in. We don't know if this is an imitation firearm, we don't know if it's a real one. Somebody could die, somebody could be seriously injured.
Put the gun down.
He was doing something with his left hand and I don't know what he was doing.
Put the gun down.
And then all of a sudden you hear this bang and all just this cloud of smoke.
I heard 3 loud bangs. I thought that my colleagues had been shot. I ran as fast as I could.
My other colleague tasered the suspect.
The hallway was filled with thick black smoke. I thought, oh God, he set something on fire.
Get your arm behind your back!
There was smoke billowing out from underneath him. It made you cough. It was unpleasant to be around. We didn't know what the smoke was at the time. We weren't sure if it was toxic. They were dragging him out. One of my colleagues was cutting a strap off from around his right shoulder.
When I was cutting that off, I could just feel all this heat coming from it.
Is he still touching the taser?
And it had wires hanging out of the top of the bag. At that point, I realised that it was an IED. We were all in a lot of danger.
The heat and the smoke coming from this device, I knew that had to get away very quickly. I had to get out of the way.
I could see him reaching down for a second bag.
Stop what you're doing! What are you doing? You're fine!
So I've cut that one off as well, made sure that was out the way so he couldn't reach. He's then been stood up and escorted to the police van.
I went to the boot of our car and I got the fire extinguisher and then doused the first device. The explosive ordnance disposal unit arrived
to start taking lead on making sure that these devices were made safe.
When I got home that day, I think that's when it really hit me. It was almost like a bit of a snap back to reality. The following day, we were told that the second device contained ball bearings, shattered glass and knife tips. I found that really difficult to process, I think. We were just so lucky that the device didn't work as Mazakiewicz had intended to use it.
This could have been so much worse, that we could either be in hospital or not coming home at all.
I think at the time of the incident, I was worried that I wasn't going to be coming home to my kids.
I didn't have any feelings at that point apart from get the job done. This is what we're here for. We need to save life and limb. Damian Mazakiewicz was sentenced to 4 years and 3 months. Having somebody with that knowledge that can produce an IED off the streets, it keeps the public safe and it keeps anybody else that deals with incidents like that safe. I wasn't expecting to be nominated for the National Police Parade Awards. It was just great.
We went to Downing Street, and that was surreal.
And to have this sort of award and recognition is once in a lifetime. Coming off that stage, just I could feel the smile on my face and I could feel my cheeks hurting because it was just brilliant.
It was emotional. It was an amazing thing to have achieved, really. But I'm more proud of the way that we pulled together as a team and we dealt with that situation.
We all knew what to do, when to do it, how to do it. And I think that was the proudest moment for me.
We kept each other safe and we kept the public safe by understanding each other and just getting the job done. I think that really that's the best achievement.
Yeah, congratulations to PC Emma and PC Scott there. Thoroughly well deserved with your award. In dealing with volatile, unpredictable situations like the ones those officers were facing is obviously extremely brave, but standing up and improving our communities is something we can all do, even in smaller ways. I'm joined now by PCSO Lloyd Bridgman from South Wales Police and Janet Hayward, the head teacher of Cadoxton Primary School in Barry. Really good to see you both this morning. And Janet, I guess the story starts with you. Tell us what happened at the school.
So, Michelle, we came back to school after the Christmas holidays. We were excited to be back, but our reception children, 4 and 5 years old, went outside into their garden area where they go and learn every day, and they were really upset to find that their outside allotment shed had been broken into and damaged.
Oh no! And this isn't the first time it had happened, is it?
So it happened for the first time then, but it happened a few times afterwards. Right. So the children became so upset that they actually made some posters.
Bless them.
That they
wow.
Just like this.
I mean, you can see some of them here. Stop hurting our shed, with a big sad face. Clearly, it's something that really affected them, Janet.
So they were really upset. They cleaned up the space, but the people kept on coming back.
And Lloyd, this is where you come in.
Yeah, absolutely. So when the incidents were reported to the police, I made a visit to the school where I met Jan, provided a bit of reassurance to Jan, her staff, and some of the children. And yeah, we decided then just to get access to the school by getting hold of a set of keys from Jan. We noticed that the incidents were happening in between, say, 7:30 and like 9 o'clock in the evening.
Right.
So myself and 3 of my colleagues, we decided to do a quick patrol, and I think it was about 8 o'clock at night. And we located 2 subjects in the garden. One was detained, one made off, but the good news is we know who they both are now, and an investigation started.
What a fantastic result. So what has this meant for the garden now, and how's it looking?
So the garden is back to its former self, but that's thanks to some parent volunteers, but also some fantastic community volunteers, including Lloyd.
Oh, well, you're a governor of the school as well now, Lloyd, aren't you?
Apparently so. Apparently so.
But talking about this connection with communities, it's so important, isn't it? And actually, Lloyd, local communities can get in touch with their PCOs really, really easily. That's something they want to get out there.
Yeah, so first of all, obviously, we're out and about, high-vis. Members of the public can approach us and speak to us whenever they like. But I think it's important to mention that people that don't feel they have a voice in the community, South Wales Police have now created a messaging service called South Wales Listens. So it gives members of the public an opportunity to engage with us through that messaging service. It's free of charge, where we actually send out messages to them of what's happening in their community, or they can speak to us about anything they're having issues with. It's important to mention that it's not to report crimes. That needs to be 999 or 101. But yeah, it's just a tool for them to engage with us. We also send messages out for crime reduction, and we can also send out messages for certain events that we're doing in your local community. So they can just pop along and have a chat with us.
Really useful tool. And finally, Janet, what's the reaction been like from the students having this beautiful garden now?
The children just love their garden. They love being outside. And I think it's just the thing of them understanding they're part of a community.
That's the thing.
It takes a village to raise a child, and Lloyd is part of that.
Very
village.
well said. Thank you so much for coming in, and I'm glad it's a good news story.
Thank you.
Right.
We just got time for a rundown of today's Wanted Faces. And we're starting with Jamal Adam Anderson. Greater Manchester Police want to question him about conspiracy to supply cocaine. He'll be 40 in May, has connections to Salford, Bury, Hume in Greater Manchester, but police haven't ruled out that he may have left the UK. Next, helped Merseyside Police find Anthony Mark Quigley in 2017. He was sentenced to 14 years in prison for a drugs conspiracy. And since he's released, he's breached the conditions of his licence and has been recalled to prison. He's 46, has links across Merseyside and also to Wales and Scotland, although police think he may have travelled abroad as well. Or, have you seen Jesse Amaru Hanna? He too has been recalled to prison after breaching the strict conditions of his licence. He's 26 foot tall, slim with short hair. Thames Valley Police say he has connections to Dunmow in Essex and Milton in Buckinghamshire. And last for today anyway, we've got Mohammed Kebab Khan, who also uses the name Hebab. West Midlands Police need to speak to him in relation to drugs offences. He's 30 and has links to East Birmingham, in particular Sparkhill, Sparkbrook and Moseley, and also to St Albans in Hertfordshire, Scotland, as well as Dubai. So, you recognise any of these men, do get in touch using the details on screen below. That's all we've got time for today. If you would like support with some of the subjects raised in the programme, help is available at BBC Line. Remember, you can also watch us on iPlayer for up to 30 days after broadcast.
Tomorrow, how a crook who found a loophole in a cryptocurrency platform managed to steal £25 million.
This is a multi-million-pound fraud investigation. 4 years, thousands of pieces of evidence, and recovering money from all over the world. It was the most complex investigation of my career.
See you tomorrow for that and more. 10:45. Bye for now.